My name's Akshay. I'm a science teacher. I teach physics, more specifically. I wanted to sort of start this talk by asking a very simple question. Why are we all so bored in classrooms? We're really bored. And this is a question that I think most people who've been in a classroom or who've taught a classroom know the answer to. But just so it's clear, let's look at some data. This is a study which I love. These are a bunch of researchers at MIT, and they fitted students with these things called electrodermal sensors. You don't have to worry about what they are. All you need to know is that they measure neural activity. So on these graphs, and this is basically the life of a child over the course of a week, you will see spikes, and you'll see troughs, and you'll see flat lines, and those are rough indicators of neural activity. Right? Now, what I want you to do is pay very close attention to the pink bit, right, where it says sleep. Looks pretty active, right? There's a lot of REM, there's neural activity when you sleep. Now, I want you to look at the yellow bits, which says class. And even if you're not statisticians, you would have concluded by now that students are more awake when they're asleep than when they are in most lectures. And this is something that most students would say, most teachers would say. And the question really we have to ask ourselves is, why? For all practical purposes, what we are doing right now is a lecture. Right? Most of you have sat through now about 6 of them. And you don't look very bored. So what happens? Is it largely a matter of performance art? Do teachers be trained in the theater arts? Perhaps. But there's something more to this, right? Most of these talks, like the talk you're listening to now, are very high level. They're conceptual in nature. We're introducing you to a new idea. We're motivating you to go do something else. But if you heard the 20th lecture I could give on teaching physics to class 11 students, this would be very different. And not because I'm a terrible speaker, but because the subject matter would get more involved and the subject matter would get harder. And what typically happens in classrooms is as you start digging into more complex subject matter, you start to stop understanding what's going on. And different people have different amounts of grit, so the average person will give up. And if your questions are not answered right then and there, you'll give up rather fast. And once you give up, it's a vicious cycle. You stop listening, you get bored, and you fall asleep. So what do we do to solve for this? Keep looking at the same data, right? I'd like you to now look at lab and homework. And you'll see there's a lot more activity there. There's a lot more engagement, and this is something we know. We know that when we are working on our own on solving a problem, when we're digging into laboratory work, when we're doing our homework, often under duress, when we're scared and panicked, we're quite awake. So could you just flip the classroom, right? Could you just turn all of classroom time into lab and homework time? So about 8 years ago, we said, let's try this experiment. Why not? So we started work in a really small Navodaya Vidyalaya school. These are government schools for gifted children. So 26 really gifted kids, all of whom wanted to clear nothing less than the IIT exam. And for those of you who don't know this, it's a really hard test. Only 10% of children in the world clear it, or in India clear it. So we took these 26 kids and said, hey, we all went to IIT. We're going to teach you for this exam for 2 years. The only catch is there's no teacher. So instead, we had a facilitator. We had someone who had no background in science, who had been educated in social sciences and then worked as an HR associate, who spent 4 hours a day making sure that these kids showed up, sat down in groups, worked through the materials we gave them, and then answered each other's questions. At the end of the week, there would be this doubt book, which is a very simple register, which had all the questions none of them could solve. And then we'd have tutors who'd show up, solve those questions, and go away. And we thought this would work, but we were very surprised when the results actually came. So 2 years out, 90% of these kids cleared the IIT JEE, right? And what was perhaps even more stunning is that we had another cohort, in fact, multiple other cohorts of equally good kids at the point we started, who were sent to commercial coaching centers. So they were all sent to high-end classrooms, with a lot of money being spent. And what we found is that the kids in Pondicherry did about 20% better than these other children. So this really was the start of a journey where we said, let's dig in more and understand more. So we tried another experiment. This time we said, let's take an entirely different cohort of kids. So we went to the municipal corporation schools in Chennai. We designed a randomized control study. So we took 12 schools at random and started to do the same thing. Only the population was very different. So kids in municipal schools are typically not at grade level. They're really struggling with basic concepts. In fact, 60% of them were more than 2 or 3 grade levels behind in class 9. And we ran this back. And this time with actually rigorous academic data and a randomized control trial. And we found once again that we were able to improve math achievement levels by 30%. And this is amongst the highest ever recorded gains in math and science learning, not just in India, anywhere in secondary school. So at this point in time, we should have just patted ourselves on the back and said the problem is solved. Right? I'd love to just end the talk here, drop the mic, and walk off. But that's only the beginning of solving this problem. Right? The world is littered with great talks and great ideas on how to solve for classroom education. The problem and the true test of any of these interventions is whether you can start to deploy them effectively in at least 1 million classrooms. To give you context, there's about 50 million children in our age groups, the age groups that Avanti teaches, which is from class 8 to class 12. So can we at least get to 10 million, 20 million? Then we'd say this is the solution. Otherwise, you could easily solve for this for small numbers of kids with amazing teachers who did all of this on their own. And it started us on what I believe was our true journey, which is how do you take what we've learned? And these were 3 things. First, that the teachers need to stop lecturing and spend most of their time facilitating learning. The second, you need to allow kids to have access to resources and structure so they can genuinely learn on their own. And the third was that you need to remediate when necessary, and not all the time. And can you take all 3 of these things and somehow now turn this into a widget that can be rolled out across 1 million classrooms? And I've spent most of my time building technology, so of course we went out and built technology. Right? And the way we started to tackle this problem was going to teachers and asking them if they would adopt our systems. Look, these systems are really successful. They've worked in a variety of contexts. Would you do this? And when we started to try and give this away and give it to people who were not our full-time employees or not social workers, we were exposed to 3 really big problems that most teachers face. All the teachers turned around and told us, look, what you're telling us is not new. We know that if we did experiments, the kids are happier. If we give them homework and they do it, they'll do well. Like, what you're telling us is not rocket science. We know this, but we can't do it. And we can't do it because we have 3 major problems. The first, we have multi-grade classrooms. And this is not only government school teachers. These are private, high-end school teachers. If you're in class 9, and this is specific to high school, you will have a big chunk of your class which does not know grade 5 mathematics. And we're supposed to make all of them happy and give all of their parents at least the illusion that their child has been taught something. The second is, unfortunately, in India, we live in a culture of high-performance testing. So it's almost like every child is a performance athlete or a race car, right? You've got to get through a lot of curriculum really fast. You have to do it well. You have to believe you've done it, and you have to go take a test, right? Which means the moment you tell a teacher, would you like to run an experiment in class, they'll say, no, I have no time, syllabus is not finished, right? And this is a genuine problem teachers have. And the last, and I think this is perhaps the biggest, is that all of the teachers are products of the same system, as are you. So if I asked you to go and start running a really collaborative learning, peer discussion-based class, you will struggle. And most of them have not even had a good education, thereby they don't have the academic competence to go and design this magical lesson plan, right? What is the mandate? The mandate is go to a classroom which has kids at every grade level, design a magical lesson plan which involves peer discussion, debate, discussion, self-study, doubt solving, do all of this, and finish it in time. It is reasonably obvious to assume that most teachers do not have either the training, the exposure, or the competence to design lesson plans to do this. And expecting them to do this just because they have been given this job is false. So how did we set out trying to solve for this? Don't try and read this chart. I've put it up there because that's just a typical way in which we break down learning objectives, right? And this is something which we've learned as we've tried to teach computers how to do human stuff, is that you need to create a learning scaffold for them. So most people, what they really struggle with is if you tell them to solve a trigonometry problem, is not remembering the facts required, but creating the problem-solving structure to solve them. And these structures, as you get to higher grades, are really, really complicated. You need to know things from your grade level, multiple steps. You need to know things from previous grade levels. Often you don't even know what you need to know. So the first step to trying to design this content is not just to take the NCERT and start designing topic by topic, but to really create deep webs of knowing what different competencies kids need to have. The second step is to design more resources than you need around each of those competencies. So you design a bunch of video content. We designed some assessments which were specific to those competencies. We designed activities that help kids learn those skills. And then we tried to put them all together in computer-generated lesson plans that the teachers could use. But to make this sound simpler, this is basically a PPT that the teacher runs through, right? But instead of just being pictures and diagrams, these are steps, these are activities. These are make the kids do this, have them debate about this, throw up a question on the screen, have them vote, have them discuss. And the kids, over time, we've been able to give them a personalized learning app so that they can take what they learned in class, go and study it along their own learning paths. And all of this data, and this looks like a lot of data, right? This is attendance data, this is performance data on competencies, this is machine learning data on predicting where each child is going. These are item characteristic curves, there's a bunch of stuff here, right? Which you don't need to understand anything of what I just said. But what it means is it all goes back to the teacher and back to our curriculum to inform it to get better. And by doing this, we've managed to build perhaps the largest network of classrooms that run with structured content around peer instruction in the country, and I hope soon in the world. We recently signed an MOU with the Haryana government, where a lot of our early pilot work is now being scaled. So this year, we'll run another randomized controlled trial, a much larger study, where we are taking over this in 219 schools. So over the course of the next year, teachers in 219 schools will switch from traditional teaching to teaching in this manner. And we'll study this process for 5 years to try and get it to be better and better and better. In addition, we now work with some of the largest school chains in the country. These are high-end private school chains. And we also take over local tutoring classes and switch them. And all through doing this, from when we had 26 kids to now when we have over 50,000 children, our outcomes have remained absolutely consistent. And the reason they've remained consistent is not because we are doing something magical, it's because we've allowed kids to learn on their own and switched the role of the teacher to that being of a facilitator. But the thing to remember here is the reason we're able to do this right now is because all of the tech and all of the content and everything that we are building is designed to help the teacher. Learning is a community activity, it's a social activity. Lots of technologists will come and have you believe that the answer to all of your learning woes is watch a video play on an app. This is not true. There's enough research to say that this is not how learning works, right? You need the teacher, you need the classroom, you need the physical structure, you need the discipline, you need your friend who's a little better than you need your friend who's a little worse than you, right? You need your friend who distracts you, right? Learning, like anything else in life, is social. It's part of how we live and we go through it. It's a very human experience, right? We know what will make it better. We know, like anything else, when you learn to play sports, when you learn to dance, sing, you learn it on your own, you learn it with community, and you learn it in a self-directed manner. We know that's the way to teach math. We know that's the way to teach science. And I think what's really, really exciting is that we're kind of at this wonderful juncture in the world, right? I've put 2 New York Times articles, one below the other. We now have a lot of science, a lot of cognitive research, a lot of behavioral research that explains to us this fact I told you, that learning is a communal activity, that people will learn from people they love, that people will learn in spaces that they find safe. But we also have computers beating chess grandmasters at chess. And I think as long as we can strike the right balance and give our learning community these tools in a meaningful manner, an integrated manner, we'll start to very quickly unlock the reimagined classroom. One where kids are learning, where they're having fun, and their teachers are having fun too, because they're creating a conducive, positive learning environment. Thank you.